Let's focus on that, I suppose. Here's my question, right? America first, not isolationist, obviously.
Right.
You mentioned that, with ISIS, it was like this real evil that needed to be stopped.
Yeah.
So it's hard to know when America first becomes we need to do something internationally.
Yeah.
So a good friend of mine, Cassandra Fairbanks, has been on the show before. And I said, we look at China and we look at the Uyghur camps and everything. It's very difficult. What do? We don't want war. We don't want to just go and fight this massive world war with China, and it would be catastrophic. But do we just watch as they commit atrocities? Cassandra said, she's like, no, I'm anti-war 100%. There's no, tons of countries are committing atrocities. We don't get involved. We can't just go and start war with a massive country. And I was like, what about trade sanctions? And she said, well, that leads to war. So how do we deal with something like that, right? If we want to take care of America first, we want to be self-reliant, at what point would we intervene, say, with concentration camps?
Yeah, I think with foreign interventions, we have to have a really clear national security objective. Like this, whatever it is overseas, threatens America, threatens our sovereignty, threatens our ability to conduct free and fair commerce. But there also has to be a clear end state. Like we go out and ISIS is a great example. We go and we take out the territorial caliphate, and then it's mission complete. We come home. We call it good. We still leave the ability to collect intelligence, occasionally strike if needed, but we don't go over there and occupy. Like there's a clear-cut objective, like with the Uyghur camps and a lot of these human rights violations that go on throughout the entire world. It's just a slippery slope. And so we intervene then in China, hypothetically. Where else do we intervene? So whenever the far left says like, hey, anywhere there's an atrocity, it's our responsibility. That responsibility to protect doctrine that like Samantha Power and a lot of the folks in the Biden administration just love. To that, I say, hey, well then go sell that to the American people and then tell them that we need to start the draft because we're going to be at war freaking everywhere. Because if you never traveled outside this country, I hate to break it to you, like the world's a dark and dangerous place.
How about a bill that whenever there's a conflict, whenever we see an atrocity, we put it up for a national vote.
Yeah.
Everybody votes. And if you vote yes, you're drafted.
I would be down with that.
That was actually proposed, I think, before World War II. They were like, anybody who wants to vote for war, you got to go join up.
Yep.
Because you can't make someone else fight for you.
Yeah.
I'm down. Because I'll tell you this. If there was something where I truly thought we had to intervene, then I'd be the first to be like, what do I need to do?
Right, exactly.
Like if I'm looking at the concentration camps in China, I'll be like, how can I help?
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't think frontline infantry makes sense for me, but I'll absolutely do what I can.
Yeah.
What makes sense. However, I'm not absolutely convinced we should intervene.
Right.
I think Cassandra made a really good point. She mentioned, there's a bunch of countries like, you see these groups in Africa, Nigeria, what they're doing to these young girls, and do we intervene there?
It's horrible,
like,
but
don't we do though?
I mean, that's where I'm like, hey, start the draft because it's everywhere, guys.
Right. Exactly.
But I think with an actor like China or pretty much any of these countries that aren't in total anarchy already, us being the economically strongest country in the entire world, that gives us a position of advantage. So then we can say, hey, China, turns out, number one, we don't need you. Number two, if you want to do business with us, then how about you stop the genocide in those Uyghur camps?
Yep.
And until you do that, we're just not going to do business with you.
We could be doing that, but Disney's saying thank you.
Right,
to
exactly.
These groups.
Yeah, Disney and the NBA and whatever.
John Cena.
The pro wrestler guy. Like, what was that all about? Like, insane.
That's pathetic.
Yeah, that just shows their control. It's
so apparently, I don't know if it was some might have been the movie. I'm not sure. There's like an 85% revenue decrease. I don't have the story.
Yeah, in China.
Was that Fast 9?
Yeah, so F9. I guess their revenue from Chinese theaters dropped by 86% because of what he said.
Wow.
You know what I would do if it were me? I was like in a movie and then I said I've been to a lot of countries. I've been to Taiwan, and they're like, oh. I'd be like, dude, if you guys are mad, whatever. I don't say. Have a nice day.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't tell you, man. Like it's like, am I gonna pick and choose who's offended, and who's not offended? Nah, if you're offended, well, sorry, I guess.
Yeah, and that just shows how China has their fingers in every aspect of our economy. It's scary.
It's an issue of the violent tendencies of leftists or the threat. So when you look at Antifa versus, say, the anti-woke, classically liberal individuals, big tech and these corporations always side with Antifa because they're the real threat.
Right.
They're not concerned about a bunch of intellectual dark web types. Could you imagine like Dave Rubin leading a pitchfork march to like Twitter HQ and like throwing bricks to the window? They're not going to happen. He's gonna sit in his studio and he's gonna ask people questions. But Antifa will show up with bricks. So when an argument breaks out, who's Twitter going to side with?
Oh yeah.
Well, Dave Rubin's not going to throw a brick at us.
Right. So
Antifa will.
Yeah.
So when it comes to China, you can smack talk in the United States. People are still going to go see the movie.
Yeah.
Not in China, though.
Not in
So who do
China,
you
yeah.
apologize to? So you apologize to China. But let me ask you this, right? So before we get into the super chats, we'll do one more. You're in the southern part of Washington, the district
Yep.
you're seeking to represent, third, and that's the border, that's the front line.
That is.
From Washington to Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
Right, that Vancouver, Washington, and the river, and then Portland.
That's right.
You're the first line of defense against the Portland Antifa and their violent mobs. But no, in all seriousness, yeah. Tell me your thoughts on what's going on with that violence, because it does cross over into Vancouver.
It does.
You've got Patriot Prayer over there. So I mean, this is where you're seeking to represent. How would you deal with this? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it has to be dealt with. So we need to treat Antifa and BLM like terrorist organizations. Like, we need to use the tools of the federal government, the FBI, the U.S. Marshals, go after them like organized criminals and terrorists. So we start arresting these guys and charging them with federal terrorism charges. That's going to take away a lot of the incentive to go out and riot.
But not the groups. You mean
the leaders?
The leaders.
The leaders. Yeah.
But so let's get into the nitty gritty though. I mean, a lot of people do have a right to fly that flag and speak their minds.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You're not talking about going after them, are you?
No, I'm not. No, I mean, at this point, like right now, after a year plus of this amount of violence, we know who the leaders of Antifa are. I mean, I know Portland police officers, and they're like, yeah, I know who all the agitators are at this point. Like, I've arrested them, and we have to let them go.
Right.
You know, over and over again.
These are people who actively organize violence.
Right.
And terror.
And terror, yeah.
There are a lot of people who might fly the Antifa flag or the BLM flag who don't.
Yeah, exactly.
However, there's a very serious challenge where you get to a point where, you know, in Portland, for instance, they're linking arms, forming a human shield as people throw explosives from behind them.
Right.
At a certain point, whether you're active in that organization, you're aiding and abetting. Terroristic attacks.
Yeah, you might not get the 10-year federal terrorism charge, but you're going to get aiding and abetting. And once we start actually having repercussions for these people, the base of support's going to die down a good deal.
I think, you know, when it comes to the leaders, we absolutely need the feds to go in, but they're too preoccupied with, you know, January 6th or whatever. I think for the people who are just, you know, doting about and bumbling and providing that warm body as a shield, you put them in you lock up for a weekend and actually just charge them for, you know, look, a lot of these people are going to get 6 months if they actually got convicted. That's not the end of the world for any person. It's not a felony charge. That would put an end to a lot of it.
Oh, absolutely.
But what happens is these people, they show up they're playing a game.
They are,
So you get people who actually are engaging in terrorist activities. I'll put it this way. You know, Michael Flynn, he made the statement we mentioned early on in the show, and we never actually started a segment on it, but he said, someone asked him about a Myanmar-style coup, and he said it should happen here, and a lot of people were like, oh, but he's not being serious, he has no power, or he's LARPing, and I'm like, that's irrelevant what you think he's doing. There are people who are cheering for that. That's dangerous. Like saying there should be a military coup in here. People are going to hear that, and that's one more grain of sand. Yeah. So on its own, that may be fairly significant, but not the most powerful thing ever done by any person, or might not lead to a catastrophic moment. But when you get some regular dumb lefty type who has no idea what's going on, put on a black mask, and show up, they have become a grain of sand, which has made that a heap. Antifa would not be able to be burning down these buildings were it not for these people.
Right.
So if you know these people are doing it, or you don't, I put it this way. Imagine people are like, hey, everybody show up at, you know, the Bank of America on 7th Street. We're gonna protest. And you show up, and a bunch of people put on ski masks and go in and start demanding money, and you stand there linking arms. I mean, you're helping them rob the bank. You know what I mean? Like
exactly.
You get in trouble for that. So anyway, so the leaders who are organizing the violence, we know they're doing it. They're not getting charged. But what about groups like Patriot Prayer? Because they've started fights. You know, some of these guys, they've gone down. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think by and large, there's been some of the Patriot Prayer guys went down there and they were expressing their First Amendment rights. I mean, if anybody went and they assaulted somebody, then I think they should be prosecuted too. We can't have two systems. It can't be like we prosecute the guys in the MAGA hat, but then we don't prosecute the guys burning down buildings. Because then you get the situation that we have right now where you have cities on fire for months on end because there's no repercussions whatsoever. So I think if you do something illegal, regardless of who you are or what your political affiliation is, like you should be charged for it.
So one of the problems we're seeing right now is a lot of these district attorneys are leftists.
Yeah.
So when Antifa walks in there, you know, they get two files. One says MAGA, one says Antifa. They say MAGA guy prison for life, Antifa guy free to go.
Let them go. Yeah.
Yep. So then we can look at what happened in New York. You had Antifa show up to this Proud Boys event. They're harassing people. They're attacking people. One guy got robbed. His backpack was stolen. And so the Proud Boys are leaving, and, you know, there's Antifa all over the place. They decide they're going to go at him. So the Proud Boys run at Antifa. One Antifa guy throws a bottle. They get into a fight. Proud Boys win.
Yeah.
It's kind of not surprising. But what happens then is when it comes to questioning by the police, Antifa runs away. They refuse to cooperate. The Proud Boys, doing the right thing, cooperated with police. They got 4 years in prison.
Oh, yeah.
And Antifa got away, and no one knows who they were.
Right.
So this is the kind of this is one of the problems we have in this country. It works the same way with gun laws. You say we're going to ban this gun. Okay, well the criminals don't care.
Yeah.
There's a video going around right now. They're saying it's like, a group of people with assault rifles, and I'm like, it looks like some dudes in an urban environment with like short-barreled, full auto, some sort. I can't tell what it was. I'm like, yeah, that's like legit, hard to get NFA. And this dude's, how did he get that? In a city, yeah, these guys are serious. Regular law-abiding citizens wouldn't have any of that stuff. When you look at what happens to the Proud Boys, these guys are like, yes, officer, we believe in you, thank you, we'll cooperate. Now they're in prison.
Yep.
The lesson here is don't cooperate with police because you're not going to get a fair deal, or at the very least, you can see how the system works. Yeah. If you show up and do the right thing and admit and give the information, they lock you up.
They lock you up, exactly. Yeah, and there's just been no repercussions whatsoever for going after these terrorists, essentially, for months on end. And it's just spread. Like, violence never goes away unchecked. If people act violently, they don't just say one day, oh, hey, it's the 15th of the month, let's stop being violent. Like, they actually have to be met with force. That's just that's the law of nature. That's the way it has to go. And so we actually have to put this back in the bottle by arresting a lot of them. And I think if we started arresting the leaders and exposing who they were and how they were being funded, like we did with the mafia back in the day, a lot of the popular support that these groups are getting in places like Portland would go away, because right now they're thriving off this whole narrative that, hey, these guys are out there fighting fascism. They're fighting for black lives. People believe this stuff. Yep. People in the suburbs of Portland believe this. They donate money. They donate political support. I mean, the neighborhood I grew up in gave almost $500,000 to the bail fund that Kamala Harris was promoting to bail out people that were burning our city down. I mean, that's a level of popular indoctrination that just amazed me.
It's hard to fight. But you're in a Republican district.
We are. Yep.
That's really interesting. Just north of Portland.
Just north,
yep. Republican. And you got to win a primary.
That's right.
The way I see it is, I've said in numerous videos, segments I've done over the past couple of months, like, why bother voting for these Republicans when you empower people like Mitch McConnell? And what does he do?
Agree.
The Republican Party in 2016 and 2018 had the ability to do stuff. Trump got in 2017. They could have made some moves.
Yep.
We knew the censorship issue was going to be a huge problem for all Republicans. They did literally nothing. And I'm like, uninspired. Lindsey Graham fist bumping Kamala Harris on the Senate floor. It's like uninspired.
It's the same party.
However, if people like you get elected, right now I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is like one of the only fighters.
Yeah.
Whether you like her or not, I'm not. Yeah. She said a bunch of dumb stuff on Facebook at one point, but she pushes back. She fights in very similar ways to many, like the Squad. She's bombastic. She's loud. Exactly. She pushes back. And so I'm not saying, if Congress was entirely comprised of just clones of Marjorie Taylor Greene, it'd be a good thing.
Right.
But you need people who are not part of the establishment, who are going to vote against this stuff. I look at the two parties, and there's after Tulsi Gabbard left, I'm not convinced as a good Democrat anymore. Yeah. And I disagree with her on some policy issues, but I think she was honest.
She was honest. Yeah.
She was trying. Yeah. And I look at the Republican Party, and I'm like, maybe 10 Republicans?
Yeah, it's a handful.
Need more.
Yeah.
And if you can get a lot more in, maybe in 2022, there will be some significant changes. I bring this up because I'm thinking about what's going on in Portland. How do you get the FBI to actually deal with these people? Well, you need some political power.
You do need
the Republicans will need to control the House, probably, and the Senate, ideally. Yeah. And not only that, you still have to you still have the issue of Biden, but then you can do more committee hearings. You can do subpoena power.
Absolutely.
But you'd also need many of those Republicans to be populist, American first.
Yeah.
People who are not part of the establishment crony machine, people who actually want to see things improve. Yeah. I do have a fear of encroaching authoritarianism, though. Mm-hmm. One of my fears is that Antifa has acted a fool so much, people will just say, get the feds and start locking these people up.
Exactly.
And then you get an equal and opposite reaction, which is still not a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, it has to be done right, but I think if we treat them like a terrorist organization or like organized crime, go after the leaders, make an example out of some of the guys that are out there locking arms and enabling it, that a lot of it would just kind of go away, because people don't want to get arrested and slapped with federal terrorism charges.
Right.
But then there does have to be a clear point where we bring the feds back. And I think we can also offensively use a lot of federal funding for these cities because Ted Wheeler, the mayor of Portland, he's let all this happen. And then Kate Brown, the governor, and then in Washington State, Jay Inslee, he's done the same thing of Seattle. I don't think those governors and mayors deserve a penny of federal taxpayer dollars. Like, we send in the feds to clean up the Antifa, and after that, we're like, hey, until you guys start prosecuting criminals and you take care of all these rampant homeless and drug issues and crime issues, like, you're just not getting any more money. Sorry.
Yeah. Man.
If we called them terrorists, if we declared Antifa as terrorists, would then the mother of the leader of the Antifa that he lives in her basement, would she be implicated for terrorist charges?
No. But you still get due process. I mean, it's still the federal government and then the FBI and the U.S. Marshals going in and arresting him.
I'll
they
tell
still get day in court.
You know what I find fascinating? People genuinely don't believe Antifa's real. They don't
right.
exist.
It's just an idea.
But it's because they watch CNN.
Right.
They don't actually read the news. They don't know these things. And so they genuinely think Antifa isn't a real thing.
Yep.
And so I see these posts on Facebook all the time where they're like, it's a meme. Antifa just means anti-fascist. There's no Antifa group. It's not true. And then I'm like, here's a list of all the known Antifa affiliates. Yeah. Like Rose City Antifa in Portland. Literally a group with people, with leaders. They have a website. You can sign up to join the group. The group exists. It's called Antifa. There's New York City Antifa. There's Salt Lake City or whatever.
Yeah.
They literally just call themselves City Antifa.
Yeah.
They exist. They cooperate with each other. They work. When there's if you're in between Seattle and Salt Lake City or whatever, they'll meet in the middle and both groups show up.
Absolutely.
But they say it's not a real thing.
Right.
And then what happens is you get these hearings where, and I don't understand where the Republicans are to push back on this stuff, or I don't know if they can do anything anyway, where they're like, the biggest threat in this country is white supremacy.
White supremacy, yeah.
I'm like, well, there's 10,000 of them. And that's by the ADA, the ADL standard. Not the ADA. No, the ADL. There's 10,000 people.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many active Antifa are there? Substantially more.
Oh yeah.
We've seen the protests across the country. There's a lot of them. Now the worst offenders are a lot less.
Yeah.
But mass protests for a year, riots, smashing up windows.
Yeah.
I think that's a much bigger threat. I suppose though, when they're flying Black Lives Matter flags at our embassies, of course to them the biggest threat is white supremacy.
White supremacy. Yeah.
To regular Americans.
And the left has no incentive to go after Antifa and BLM because they execute their political policy for them. And we saw that in lighting the cities on fire in the year that Trump was trying to get elected. And then right now, the way that they've jumped onto this whole Palestinian issue. You see the whole Palestinian flag getting flown by Antifa. And that's all being done because Joe Biden is screwing up the Middle East. We gave money back to Iran. Iran gave money to Hamas. Boom, we got a war going again. But to run cover for that, just in the same way Antifa and BLM brings up all these racial issues to keep the working class distracted. Now we have Antifa saying, oh, it's all about Palestinian liberation now. That's part of the Black Lives Matter movement, run distraction.
It's tribalism. Yeah. That's all it is. Because I went to Belfast, and they have the peace wall from the Northern Ireland. And on one side it's Palestine, on one side it's Israel. And I asked a local, I was like, why, what's with the Israel-Palestine thing? And it's like, oh, the one side thinks they're oppressed, so they associate themselves with Palestine. The other side thinks that they're the natural rights, so they with Israel. And I'm like, that has nothing to do with Northern Ireland. And it's just they identify. It's leftist causes for one group, nationalist causes for the other group. And I'm like, that's all it is.
Yep.
This, and that's where I think we're seeing a lot of that here, where people are getting into fights over Israel and Palestine. And I tell you, man, there's a lot of people, I hear them screaming pro-Israel, screaming pro-Palestine, and I'm like, I don't understand. I'm hearing the same thing from both sides. I'm not here to equate. I'm just saying, man, people are really tribalistically involved in that conflict. And it's really hard to figure out. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.